Top of the afternoon, everyone. This is David Phillips. I am with Godlan. We are an implementation partner for Infor, and we're thrilled to have you join us here today to talk with our seminar about preventing ransomware and cyber attacks and being hacked in your current business systems. So we have an exciting afternoon that we're going to try and make the most of our time here. We've carved out about 30 minutes for this session. We might go over just a little bit, but we'll keep it moving pretty quickly here. So real quick, and the question or the answer may be obvious to what do these companies have in common, but just to share what the answer is they were all hit by ransomware attacks last year. So anywhere from, if you're a manufacturer of cars or computers or a consulting firm, or Exagrid is actually a company that makes video games, to Ragtag is a chemical manufacturer, to CNA Financial, which is an insurance company. All industries are being hit by these attacks. And I don't mean to bring this up to scare anybody. This is just the reality of the environments that we work in today. So today's session is, what can you do to help prevent these types of attacks? What can you do to prevent people getting your information, holding it for ransom, and how can you protect your organization? How can you reduce the risk to your organization? So we have an exciting group of speakers here today. First off, Soma Somosandran is a Chief Technology Officer with Infor. He's going to start us off today and really talk about, how did this come into the strategy of Infor, and why did Infor choose to partner with Amazon Web Services, AWS, as a key partner to help us set up, and protect our clients, Infor clients, and their intellectual property. Then Vake from AWS is going to talk with us about the services that AWS provides and how they help their customers, protect themselves from ransomware, from being hacked. And then Charmaine Raymond is going to speak with us today about, how can you reduce the risk to your organization from an insurance perspective. Charmaine is an expert in cyber related insurance, and so she'll be able to take the perspective from an insurance perspective. So real quick, the focus today is on cybersecurity, but I did want to put a real quick plug in for Infor, just so you know who Infor is. Infor is the third largest application software business in the world, approaching over 3.3 billion in annual revenue. But the focus for this industry, though, is in the cloud. So as Infor provides these business applications to their 67,000 customers around the world, one of the things, the key components of providing these hosted applications is that we have to provide the security and around it, so that we protect the intellectual property. We protect their information from hackers, from ransomware. So today, Infor has over 14,000 companies that are individual customers that use their cloud applications, which means there are millions of people every day that sign on to AWS to use Infor applications to run their business in the cloud, fully secured. Lastly, we want to make sure that you understand that Infor is a wholly owned subsidiary of Koch Industries. And from Koch perspective, one of the things that is most important to Koch is a long-term perspective. Koch is known for having a long-term strategy. And this was a basic component of the strategy that Infor had to have as to who we're going to partner with from a platform perspective to host all of our leading business applications. So to start off with, I thought I would invite and have Soma Somosandran, who is the Infor Chief Technology Officer, start us off with a discussion on his part in this discussion, the thoughts that Infor had as to what was most important to Infor, and then why they chose AWS as a strategic partner to help us address this. Now, Soma goes way back with Infor, and as Soma, I do believe you were employee number one, or I know you were at least in the first 3 employees of Infor, correct?
Yeah, no, I guess you could say Infor started with me, or I started with Infor, whichever way you look at it. Yeah, I am employee number 1 with Infor.
Okay.
But that just tells my age, but nonetheless, that's the fact.
Okay, so Soma, do you have slides that you want to show, or
no slides?
Okay.
I think we can just talk to it. I think people on Zoom calls and watching slideshows is not really fun. So I'm gonna just talk. Anyway, welcome everybody, and nice to sort of see you all connected for this particular topic. Clearly, cybersecurity and ransomware is a hot topic. It was a hot topic, and it has become even more important with the current political situation over in Europe. It's even become more and more important in terms of how to protect precious data and the systems we have for your organizations and for us. Obviously, we are running software and supporting thousands of customers in the cloud. This is something that we put enormous focus in to protect our systems and our customers' data and processes, right? So if you really look at it, security is a very, very complex topic. So if I were to peel the layers, number 1, we chose to partner with AWS. And so AWS by far, has significant investment in, the web services capabilities and the number of services that we utilize on AWS. I'm going to venture to say we are probably pushing the envelope in terms of the usage of the services that AWS offers. So clearly on the security side, we're riding on top of AWS capabilities. That's number 1. And on top of that, if you look at our industry applications we deploy in the cloud, I don't know the exact count, but I'm going to venture to say we probably have 500 million lines of code running on AWS, supporting the industries we support and the technology capabilities we offer. So one of the things that we put in as a policy, and you all should do as well, is if you're writing code by inherently has vulnerability. So there are tools out there. We use Veracode, for example, to scan anything that is being checked in for vulnerabilities. Silly things like somebody hard-coded a login, or there's possible SQL injection that somebody can take control of the database, things of that nature. So there's code scans that happen on a daily basis, anytime somebody checks code in. So that's sort of the basic layer of detecting vulnerability. If you go one step from there, the code is getting deployed into our pre-production environment and the production environment. That has potential infrastructural vulnerability. So we use tools to do pen testing. This tool called Cobalt.io, for example, to really, as we deploy code and deploy it on an infrastructure, making sure that the infrastructure is secure and doesn't have vulnerability. That's sort of second layer of security. And these 2 layers, if you detect a severity 1 or a high severity 2, there are policies we put in place that no code will get deployed with a known severity 1 into a production environment, right? And if you find one once the code is deployed, how long can you wait to get this thing addressed? For a Sev 1, our goal is to get it done within days and deploy that in production once we come to know of a vulnerability. So that's sort of infrastructure, code and infrastructure. If you go from there in the deployment side, you're obviously deploying on OS, whether it's Windows or Linux. So we have policies for aggressive OS patching. We're trying to get it down to 3 days or less for OS security patches that we keep up to date. And that's sort of the next layer in terms of what we do. And in order to do that, not only for this reason, but also for this reason, we also have what I call zero downtime patching. That enables us to patch without the system being taken down, right? So that's important because as patches are getting deployed, if you take the system down, that interrupts the 24/7 operation, right? So that's sort of a policy that we have, and our apps are getting to zero downtime patching to eventually getting zero downtime upgrades. So that's that. Then you have, from a intrusion detection and in managing the environment, there are 2 layers there. We deploy everything behind a web application firewall, which we are using AWS capabilities there. So WAF essentially allows for first layer of defense. If a hacker were to get in, like the Log4j example, we can quickly deploy a rule that basically shuts down entry and make it look like we're not using Log4j, even though we were using Log4j, right? So that's sort of the web application firewall. Then you have behind that, if somebody were to get through that, we have the next layer of defense is we have CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike is basically looking for intrusion detection, and it will basically take action and shut down, kill the attempt if somebody were to try to put something onto a server beyond the web application firewall. So we have CrowdStrike deployed there to monitor and kill things that look malicious. So that's that. And on top of that, we have what we call least privilege access. What that is if you are a database administrator working in our cloud, you only have access to the database. You do not have access to the app tier or the web tier. Likewise, we have security groups for each of these. So that kind of prevents a malicious actor inside or outside taking control of the entire system, right? So that's what we call least privilege access. That's how everything is deployed. So if all of these sort of fails and we detect something like the Log4j scenario, where we need to really act quickly, we have an incident response, sort of an emergency protocol. So I can tell you that when the Log4j hit, I got a call on a Friday afternoon at around 2 o'clock that there is this major problem we need to activate. We activated about 1,500 engineers around the globe to really quickly just patch the system, get it taken care of. And by Sunday morning, this was done, right? So at least the first layer of getting that addressed, we got it done. So now I'm not going to name the company, but somebody got in the news because they just didn't have that incident response. And by the time they got to it, their system got taken over. That is a bad scenario, right? So while we want to have everything bulletproof, nothing is bulletproof when it comes to security. So having this incident response as a way to tackle when things do go wrong and you detect, you're able to quickly turn around and respond and take care of customers' data and the systems, right? So that's sort of, in a nutshell, those are the layers of security that we care about. And we have an incident review committee that meets once a month, including the legal team and myself and the CFO and several others, to really walk through incidents. And if somebody made a human error exposing something into the public internet or things of that nature, we capture those, train these people, have training classes, security awareness training. So this is an ongoing program. So I don't want to come across as we know exactly what we're doing and figured out everything we need to figure out. But the idea is when we do figure out something new, we have a way to institutionalize and get it digested by the entire organization and do that quickly. So hope that kind of helped paint a picture in terms of how we have thought about security in the cloud. And so far, these policies and the components that I talked about, I would say is serving us really, really well. So let me pause there. David?
Soma, thank you so much for that insight. And it's really critical because as we're providing business applications as a trusted advisor to our clients, security now has become such a critical component of it. It's much more than just providing the business applications. So if anybody has any questions, I want to make sure you're aware that on Zoom there's a Q&A panel. So please feel free to go into the Q&A panel, write any question in there, and then we'll be sure to answer them at the end. So Soma, again, thank you so much for joining us here. Now I'd like to, if we could, transfer to Vikant. And Vikant is going to take it down another layer to talk about AWS specifically and what are some of the services that they provide to Infor and the services that are available to all of the AWS customers. So Vikant is a senior partner and solutions architect for AWS. So Vikant, are you ready to go?
Thanks, David. So hello, everyone. Okay. Thanks for joining us today. I'm again Vikant Lakshmanaraman, Senior Partner Solution Architect with AWS. So we'll talk about what you need to know to protect your system from ransomware. Before we start, a quick look over the agenda for today. So we'll look at the current state of ransomware and cyber threats, and then we'll talk about a general overview of ransomware. And we can go in detail about the AWS services and providing solutions, and finally close out with some best practices to follow. Okay, so if you look at it, it's safe to say that ransomware is becoming one of the hottest topics in industry. We have spoken about it today. So it started early 2000s like a minor annoying thing to actually a huge business today, and it's constantly continuing to grow. There was a recent study which says about like we happen to see a ransomware like every 7 seconds. So we probably could do the math on how many such occurrences are happening the time where we are in this session. So it is big. It is taking a toll on a lot of companies here. Okay, so as you can see the news clippings, right? It's rare to go through a week without hearing or reading about any ransomware incidents. So typically it's becoming a norm these days, like to see headlines of news coming out regarding ransomware attacks or hearing about another company suffering from an attack. So the numbers which you look at here are like pretty staggering numbers, right? Gartner estimates like at least 75% of the organizations will face one or more threats between now and 2025. So if I want to put a dollar number to that perspective, it's about like financially $20 trillion last year. And you can read the quotes in the news, which is presented on the screen. So you would have even heard about any of your customers impacted by ransomware, at least in the news, right? So it's a real threat. It's something our customers are actively thinking about. There are budgets being allocated specifically for mitigating ransomware and so on. Okay. So to start with, right, in terms of understanding or defining what ransomware is. So essentially it comes in like 2 different flavors. The first one, what's called a locker ransomware. So where it revolves around hackers locking out the users from gaining access to their devices or an application. It could be a laptop, it could be file share, any of those. And the second flavor is something called, which is more common these days, right? It's called crypto attacks, where the attackers encrypt the data and prevent the user from accessing the important files. So they hold the decryption key for a ransom. So when you pay you probably get the keys. Sometimes you may get the data back. Sometimes you don't get the data back. There are instances of both happening, like you saw on the first screen, right? So typically in both the cases, the idea is very simple. So the data is still visible. You can see it. You will try to access it. So that typically increases the odds of you paying the ransomware. So it's a way of getting the users out of the system. So talking about when are we vulnerable, right? There are quite a few scenarios where a system becomes vulnerable to ransomware. Like first and foremost, probably this could be the easiest one to identify is the technical aspects of it. Like unpatched system or patching is not up to date. That's something, one of the important things. And then you're not having an automated backup and restore option, or having a manual process for like backup and restore. So those are the things which are pretty straightforward technical limitations. The other one which we can talk about is, which is constantly emerging these days, is the idea of social engineering, like sending a link to a user and having the user click on a link which they are not supposed to, and then gaining an entry through that. That's one way of doing it. And finally, I think Soma spoke about having the importance of governing strategy, right? When the event happens, so when you look at the way it is, we need to have a proper governing strategy. So oftentimes when we actually drill down any of the customers, and we see that there is a lack of governing strategies, or probably a centralized department or a security strategy to view and prepare for ransomware. So we need to have a way to look at it in a holistic way. Right. Okay, I think you would be familiar with NIST. It stands for National Institute of Standards and Technology. So in 2014, they published a major framework for critical infrastructure cybersecurity, right? So within that study, they identified like 5 major pillars. So typically it is identifying, protecting, detecting, responding, and recover. So up until recently, we see a lot of customer putting emphasis on the first 4 pillars, but the 5th is kind of neglected. So you want to take focus on recovery strategies as well. Okay, so in line with the NIST framework, which you saw earlier, there are many AWS services and AWS partner offerings that can be employed to mitigate the risk of ransomware. So this slide typically talks about a small subset of those services. Like we have many other services too. I'm putting in a small subset of services here, which are aligned with the NIST functions, like basically, again, to identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover from ransomware. So I want to talk about a couple of examples here. I think Soma brought up the way Infor handles and have a defensive mechanism through WAF, right? Like a web application firewall. So we could use something like a firewall manager to help protect the customer instances and resources. So even if there are known vulnerabilities, so this can come in as a defensive mechanism to do it. And then you could use something like a secret manager to protect against credential compromises. And you have something called AWS config. With appropriate config rules, we can protect any kind of unauthorized changes to any of the systems there. When we talk about like, so unique capabilities of AWS, right? With respect to a response function, so we provide a ways to automate response actions. So everything from bringing up automated stand-up of a new non-infected instances, or isolating or shutting down any of the infected instances. Basically, that can be done using a combination of services like EC2 autoscaling group, ELBs, or Lambdas, and any of those available to users. And again, AWS closely partners with Infor in building the products, and Infor uses many of these services to set up the Infor Cloud Suite application, which is running on AWS. Moving on, why AWS? So many have asked this question, like, why is ransomware protection better in AWS, right? There are typically several reasons to it. I'm just going to talk about very few here. First and foremost, we have many security services within AWS that customer can use. So all of those can be, some of those can be enabled like with a one-click, such as Amazon Guard Duty, for example, right? So Guard Duty can be enabled in one click, and it can detect threats and anomalous activities for you. And then you can use something like AWS Security Hub to automate the security checks and so on. And then another reason which is helpful is a about using the managed services. So traditionally, patching is something which is an activity. So if you use managed services with the shared responsibility model, AWS does the patching for you. So you could use services like Amazon API Gateway, AWS Lambda, or a Dynamo database, Amazon Aurora for that matter, right? So all of these are managed services, and the patching is taken care by the AWS for you. And lastly, the key differentiator here is like when it comes to building down infrastructures. So we typically want the customer to build something called immutable infrastructure and architecture, so that you can rebuild your environment quickly. So you can build a lower environments for testing or recovery. Instead of building it manually, you could just start off from very quickly. So there are tools and services available, like something like AMI Builder. You could use auto scaling group to spin up new instances and so on. So let's dive into some high-level best practices. I think Soma spoke about how Infor does most of these, right? So first and foremost, patching is very important, patching and hardening system. So when you have an unpatched vulnerabilities, are one of the most common reason, ransomware infects an environment. So it's important to rapidly identify and patch vulnerabilities. We could use something like Amazon Inspector to identify vulnerabilities. We can assess the instances against a certain security benchmark and so on. And the second one is using of static credentials, right? Or having probably an overly permissible policies are a big security risk. So we could use Amazon Federated Accesses, AWS SSO, or with any existing providers to take care of that. We can use IAM Analyzer, so Access Analyzer, to scope down the permissions, ensure that only the right people has access to the right systems. And we recommend using a multi-account strategy probably to limit the scope of the impact. And again, this is another topic which is for like developing and exercising an incident response plan. So this is important because it's a combination of 3 steps. One is people, another is process, another is technology. So it's a combination of people, process, and technology. So we typically want the customer to be prepared for a security event, right? It doesn't necessarily need to be a ransomware. It could be just a security finding from a guard duty, for example, Amazon guard duty, for example, right? So there is a need for defining a playbook. Like we need to have a playbook to take actions in a consistent manner. Like if an incident response team should know who the stakeholders are, who they are talking to, and they should have the right access to the right accounts at the right time. And we also wanted the customers to ensure that they have operationalized the AWS security services like Guard Duty or Security Hub, which provides notifications, and we need to have someone monitor it and basically fix it and take action upon it, right? We need to operationalize the whole process. And lastly, to talk about self-assessment, right? There are several ways. There are several ways today to do a self-assessment to help you assess with your AWS environments and workloads. So we have something called well-architected review. You could do that. You could use a module specifically built for ransomware, which is available on GitHub. I can share the details. And then typically AWS works with Infor. We partner with them. We conduct what's called an FTR, which is a foundational technical review, which is an exhaustive review of products to identify and remediate risk. We do all of those before actually the product is going out. Okay. Come to the end. I will look for questions. If there is anything, we can catch there.
All right, Viken, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here today. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Zoom Q&A panel, and we'll be monitoring that, and we will we'll read through the questions at the end. So last but not least, I'd like to introduce you to Charmaine Raymond. Charmaine is in the insurance industry. So everything we've been talking here today is about managing risk and about reducing risk. So risk to your systems, risk to your data, risk to your business. So right in line with that is buying insurance. We buy insurance to help reduce risk to our lives, our homes, our cars. And Charmaine has built a business all around protecting your business with cyber insurance. And I like her last statement here, building cyber resiliency. So Charmaine, are you ready?
I sure am.
All right.
Thank you, David and team, for the opportunity to speak with this wonderful group of folks. Today, I'd like to share some thoughts from risk management and mitigation perspective that cyber insurance carriers see all businesses face and the type of cyber incidents and claims that are high on the list. As there's a saying, numbers don't lie. Here are some quick cyber facts involving businesses of all sizes and industries. We think that only big enterprises are victims of cyber attack, but small and medium businesses are just as exposed, if not more. As you can see, the difference between 2020 and 2021 average of ransomware demand and payout, it is exponentially rising year after year after year. USA is vulnerable to ransom attack, as these attacks are more dominant in internet connected populations. And it doesn't help that our country is sadly not on the list for being the most cyber secure country in the world. Big cyber attacks make it on the news, just like David shared earlier, and so did Spike, either because the impact trickles down to general population, which impacts our economy, or there's a huge financial impact from supply chain cyber attacks. And oftentimes it's a combination of both. Now, hackers are working even smartly and focusing on quantity in recent years. They continue to build more efforts in attacking small and medium businesses, as it rarely makes the news. And they do not get chased after compared to the ones that make headlines globally. So let's look at the next slide with threats all businesses face and how these same threats are being faced in the industrial and manufacturing industries. Along with traditional data breaches, which started in 1990s soon after the internet started, as we all know now, ransomware attacks are on the rise and have prevented us from accessing work computers, pushed up meat prices, led to gas shortages, shut down schools, delayed legal cases, and caused some hospitals to turn away patients. There are even reported deaths which initiated with the ransom demand. We also see many forms of social engineering cybercrime, such as business email compromise, which can lead to invoice manipulation or fund transfer fraud. DDoS attack is disruption of business services, which could bring a business to a complete halt. These universal threats can be financially devastating for business of any size. You may be shocked to hear that the manufacturing industry is steadily moving up the list of the industries at higher risk of cyber crimes as one of the top 5 industries among healthcare, financial services, government, and legal sector. Hackers are now realizing the attractiveness, the value, vulnerability, and sensitivity of the manufacturing industry. This sector is more vulnerable to cyber crimes because companies in manufacturing have not yet fully realized the importance of cybersecurity and therefore not fully ready and equipped to cope with an attack. Cyber crimes love this fact as they go for low-hanging fruits. The risks are greater in that the manufacturers depend mostly on systems and networks that lack robust cyber defenses. Many organizations are utilizing legacy systems without any safeguards and protection in place. Sensitive files and data can be accessible and thus more vulnerable to exposures. Remember, just need one human error to get into the system. Data breach and cybercrime, including ransomware, can have ripple effects of subsequent costs, expenses, fines, losses, and liability lawsuits. So let's look at how cyber insurance could become a financial cushion for a company on the next slide. A standalone or comprehensive cyber policy will have coverages that are addressing today's cyber threats, and these cyber policies are constantly being enhanced as hackers are finding new vulnerability to disrupt businesses. Manufacturing companies have a wealth of information about their employees, vendors, clients, product, and production information. All 50 states, DC, federal government, and other countries now have privacy laws and regulations requiring prompt notification if data is lost, stolen, or disclosed. Cyber coverage will provide vendor panel, including legal and forensic team, to pay for the cost of investigating a potential breach, determining if notification is required, providing notification services and credit monitoring to affected individuals. Cyber policy will also cover claims by clients or other third parties arising out of a breach. Manufacturers rely heavily on their computer systems to properly fill orders. Damage to a manufacturer's computer system can lead to defective products or a complete halt in production. Cyber attacks can disable, corrupt, or even shut down entire networks of computer systems, preventing any work from being done and thus resulting in lost profits from the inability to operate machine systems that are managed digitally, process data, or run your daily operations. Comprehensive cyber coverage would also include data restoration and business interruption, which will pay for the loss of profit while these systems are down awaiting restoration. Ransomware and cyber extortion can be costly, as it's the most prevalent attack today used against every industry. 40% of manufacturers that surveyed said that they had a cyber incident in the past 12 months. Guess what? Ransomware was the leading means of attack. This is a very critical coverage to have on your cyber policy to survive. It is financially wise to have robust cybersecurity and cybersecurity insurance along with updated systems in place, or the breaches will become worse to face on your own and bear expenses. There's no doubt that cybercrime is on the rise across the world and hitting all industries. While advancements in technologies have boosted the productivity and efficiency of businesses, organizations are ever more vulnerable to cyber attacks, as hackers are always a few steps ahead and proactively looking for ways to hack businesses. So let's turn over to the final slide for some basic cyber hygiene we can all practice to digitally protect our companies and ourselves. Having two-step authentication, also known as multi-factor or dual factor, is a basic security tool we all should have for our remote access, networks, email, our backup files. Cloud and segregated backup is another necessity to restore business when we face ransomware. Other security foundations include email and web security, password manager, EDR tools to monitor endpoint traffic, incident response plan, along with cyber awareness training, as human inability to recognize the threat can lead to a successful attack. Referring back to cyber facts, human error and system failure account for 52% of data security breaches. Of course, you want to add a comprehensive cyber policy to mitigate financial risks of the cyber attack. Know that these digital attacks are not covered in your general liability or other commercial policies. Cyber insurers will decline to quote any business, including startups, and offer coverages if basic security features are not present. For example, they look for MFA being turned on, or cloud or segregated backup, or they won't even offer a quote. Forget about a discount. So before I turn it back over to David, I'd like to emphasize that today, no organization is completely immune to cyber attacks. It is so critical for SMBs and individuals to assess their security maturity, get educated, as well as plan to mitigate the unknown risks and cover first and third-party cyber attacks and data breach risk to protect from financial burden in the event of a cybercrime. Utilize the tools and assistance available today to build cyber resiliency. And I say, don't wait, mitigate. And with that, back to David.
All right, Charmaine, thank you so much. And while we have you here on microphone, a quick question for you. I did get texted a question, and that is, and this may be coming from someone at Infor, but they have a client that just said to them that their insurance on their on-premise system went up 30% this year. What have you seen as an industry trend between companies that are on-premise versus companies that are in the cloud, where on-premise they have to set up this type of security themselves versus being provided by a service such as AWS? What have you seen that do to insurance rates?
So it's not just about being on-premise or off. What's happened in the past few years, the incidents have skyrocketed because we had to adjust very quickly due to our situation that were dealing with in pandemic. And what happened is that a lot of companies did not have these prior security measures in place and opened up a lot more vulnerability. So what's happening as an adjustment to what's happened with claims and breaches that we've seen and other situations that happened due to cyber attacks, carriers are adjusting their rates based on the industry, the risk, and the cyber security protocols that you might have. A lot of cyber insurance are now actually adding an endorsement for bring your own device. So there's not a difference between you working from home versus in office. It's more like what your security posture look like, and that's where the differences happen. And some cyber insurance companies have maybe dealt with a lot of claims, so they have to adjust the price. And there might be other cyber insurance companies that might still be more competitive than your current one. So I say it's always good to get comparison among few carriers and not just one, just to make sure that yes, you're still with a good carrier, not only for comprehensive coverage, but also cost effectiveness of the policy.
All right. And another question has come in. Soma, from an executive perspective, I know that Infor works across industries, whether it's hospitality, manufacturing, distribution, insurance. We provide a number of different applications. As you're talking with other executives across industry, where would you put cybersecurity in the list of top 10 issues that executives want to discuss with you?
Well, I wouldn't be exaggerating if I said that is a number one concern for most companies, right? So, given the current climate, it's even become more topical. But this comes up all the time, right? And there is also a level of potentially, I would say, misconception that things running in your own data center are perhaps more secure than cloud, which is not the case, right? So it always comes up as like, how secure is the environment? How does AWS help in this scenario? What does your security topology look like, and incident response, all of those things. So this is, I would say it's super critical. In some industries like hospitality, they are consumer facing, right? So it's even more sensitive in those industries.
Okay, very good. And one last question for Vacan here. So Vacan, I know that this is a huge issue that AWS provides for its clients. Do you have any idea of the number of people or dollars that AWS spends roughly on providing the security annually? What type of investment is this?
Yeah, I mean, AWS, I don't have the numbers on top of my head, but we do have a significant investment on the security, right? We constantly innovate. And if you look at the number of services, we innovate at a very faster click, and constantly coming up with new services and features with the customer needs. So, and again, 90% of what we are building is basically based on customer feedback. When we hear a problem or a customer issues, that's how We work backwards from there. We build features based on it. And remaining 10% is basically understanding what the customer would want and building those. So there is a significant investment. Security is one of the top most priority for AWS. So it will always remain the top priority, right? So, and our AWS has been architected in a way it's most flexible and secure. It's most flexible and secured environment available today, right? And our core infrastructure is built on to satisfy the requirements of military, global banks, or any other high sensitive organizations typically.
Okay, well, very good. Well, this concludes our session for today. Unless there are any last questions, just throw them in the chat or the Q&A real quick. Otherwise, for any other follow-ups, any other questions that arise, my email and phone number are right there on the screen. Again, my name is David Phillips. I am with Godlan. We're a certified Infor implementation partner for the Cloud Suite Industrial product line provided by Infor. So thank you all for spending your time with us this afternoon. Greatly appreciated. And we look forward to any feedback you provide on this session. Thank you so much and have a great day.